Welcome to A Kid's Life podcast. I'm Angela Lockwood, and for the last 20 years, I have been working in schools, supporting teachers to build inclusive classrooms. Through A Kid's Life podcast, my goal is to help us adults better understand the complexities of life as a kid. My guests and I share stories, reflections, and simple strategies to support kids of all needs as they walk through life. So whether you're looking for inspiration, direction, guidance, tips, or just a laugh, A Kid's Life podcast is the place for you. Enjoy. Welcome to A Kid's Life podcast. You're joining me, Angela Lockwood, and today we have our guest who is the owner of The Functional Family. Now, The Functional Family is a platform that provides life-changing strategies to parents of children with ADHD and anxiety. And the creator, founder, mother extraordinaire, gifter of so much breathing space for families who are finding challenge is Sharon Collon, and she joins us on the podcast today. Welcome, Sharon.
Oh, thank you, Angela. It's such a great honour to be here.
Thank you, of course. And I remember hearing about The Functional Family, and I loved the title. And obviously being an occupational therapist who works with children and works in schools and have done so for nearly 20 years, I was like, oh, this sounds really interesting. And so, of course, I did some stalking and some Googling, as we all do on your many platforms. And I tell you what, the work you are doing in supporting families of kids who have ADHD and anxiety, oh, my hat goes off to you. It is so needed, and we thank you for creating this space.
Oh, thank you. I mean, it was almost called the dysfunctional family, I've got to say. I wanted to, highlight the struggles that a lot of these families face day in, day out, and really how much more support we as society need to give them. And I couldn't find a lot of support. And so that's where I wanted to create it, and create it for not only for my boys, but for other families as well.
And of course, you refer to your 3 beautiful boys, all who have been diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which we are simplifying to ADHD. Could you share with us, how did that come about? Because I know for a lot of people, there is a real stigma attached to ADHD, which is they're naughty kids, or it's bad parenting, or they just need a good kick up the bum, whatever people negatively put to ADHD, and we know that that is not the case. So how did you come to find that your children were struggling with some issues?
It's an unfortunate stigma, and it's really one that is really misunderstood, this diagnosis. So a little bit about my story is I married an incredible man who still to this day, and I work with ADHD people every day, is the most severe I've come across. He is so hyperactive, incredibly brilliant, but only has 2 modes, which is full on doing everything or asleep. And we went along to have 3 beautiful boys. And Xavier, our eldest, I started to recognise things with him. He was a very challenging baby. But as he got older and we sort of identified things and comparing him to my friends' kids and things like that, there was definitely something going on underneath the surface. And I was very aware of ADHD, obviously, because his father has it, and they're 2 peas in a pod. They are very, very similar. And it got to the age where it was appropriate to get a diagnosis. Obviously, we'd been flagged at kindies and schools and things like that, and I knew it was coming. And we sat in the paediatrician's office and got a diagnosis of severe ADHD, combined type, so that is inattentive and hyperactive. And there's 3 different types. There's the inattentive or hyperactive or combined, which is the most common presentation. And I sat there waiting for a list of things that I should do, or places that I should reach out to, or things that I should take Xavier to try and help my little boy, who was clearly struggling in a lot of ways. And there just wasn't a great list presented. There was no list. We were sort of presented with medication, and obviously through our own trials, we found an incredible OT, and those things definitely helped. But there was a real lack of how I was to operate with this boy at home. I felt the weight of responsibility. How was I supposed to, raise a functional adult? I couldn't even get him to put his shoes on, And during all this time and all this researching and studying ADHD and working out how their brains work and trialing different therapists and really doing everything that we could to support Xavier. In that time, I had 2 other little boys, and they both have ADHD as well. And it really hit home to me how hard it is for the parents of these kids. There's some beautiful therapists around, like OT, yourself, child psychology, and things that can help the child. But the mums in particular, or whoever is the primary caregiver, are taking big hits time and time again, because everyone's got, they're just faced with negative feedback and all the time, and it can be quite an isolating journey. Your children are a little bit different to their friends. You get labelled as a bad parent. You have the naughty kid, the one that can't, I don't know if we should invite them to the party because, we don't know if they can control them. And, it is quite a sad journey for a lot of parents. And that is echoed throughout my community as well, that they feel isolated and alone. And I just decided that it wasn't good enough. There's no other disability or neurological difference that we would tolerate being spoken to, like how ADHD is. People feel very confident to say really yucky things. We've had an incident where someone's said in a classroom setting, "Oh, sit down, you're behaving like you've got ADHD."
Don't. Oh.
And so to the kid who actually has ADHD, that's just purely a negative, isn't it? So I wanted to change the conversation. So my motivation behind everything with the functional family is really improving the world, not just for my little boys, but for all people that have ADHD, and changing this talk that we have about it and letting people know that there is beautiful, positive things that they can do. And then it's kind of my biggest motivation is making it a little bit easier for these people at home, because if we've got some joy at home and some time at home, then the mums and the dads that are there in the front line can have time to do all, the exercises and really help the child when they're not just surviving each day.
Yeah, wow. I can remember when I had private practice as an occupational therapist many years ago, and before I had children. And I can remember the recommendations that I would give to parents and thinking, sure, like that, of course they're going to have time every morning before their child goes out the door to go and jump on the trampoline and to do this and do that. And then I had children of my own. And reality hit me that actually family life when you are a parent with children is busy. It is chaotic. It is, you got to just get them out the door on time. And that in itself is a high five achievement, let alone when you have children who have difficulty getting themselves organized in the morning, or even just getting out of bed, or if they get up out of bed really early, they're just full on from the minute they get up. That's exhausting. And I know when I had children for myself, my whole recommendations of what I would do with families changed, because there was that level of understanding that life is busy and chaotic in all families. And then families like yourself have an added layer of complexity to that. And so there is such a need. And that's why I love the work you do, Sharon, that there is such a need for support for families, because I know as a therapist, we're child focused. Yes, it's about the environment and the family. We take that into consideration. But my gosh, the parents, what you guys really need to do and step up and look after your children as you do, but there's also that element of looking after yourself. So how do you navigate your day of making sure that you have the energy to support your husband and your 3 boys and, run a business and making sure that you stay socially connected? What do you do to help you stay sort of sane and in control?
Well, I guess it's not something that I've always done well. And in the start, I sort of ran myself ragged. We were doing everything, and we were doing, we were trying so hard with Xavier to make everything fit, and Anthony, works long hours, and things were just chaos. And to be honest, our home life just sucked. Like, it was awful. And so I used to actually, before I walked in the door after going somewhere, I'd have to do these deep breathing before I walked in, and like psychologically prepare myself for the onslaught that was coming for me. And it wasn't a very pleasant environment. Everyone was stressed. And as a result of that, I ended up getting a diagnosis of an autoimmune disease. And it wasn't until I got that diagnosis that was quite a big hit, that I thought, okay, I have to make this work, because if I don't lower our stress levels and bring some joy back into our family and, make this manageable for us, because it was just out of control, I don't know if I'm going to be around to help these boys. And without me, they're lost. Like I know that sounds selfish to say it, but I needed to be there to advocate for them and to make sure that they were okay. So I started getting to work and reviewing, the bits in my house that suck the most, like which bits caused me the most amount of distress.
And what were they, Sharon? What were what were the sucky bits? Tell me those.
Getting the kids dressed, that sucked. Getting the kids in the car. So any transitions, car time was just awful. And I think that's amplified by the fact that they're 3 and there's 3 of them and they sit next to each other. But all the transition stuff, like it was the day, what I worked out, it wasn't the big things that were, I was prepared for the big things, but it was all the little things that slowly grind you down,
How close are your kids in age? Sorry.
I've got a 12-year-old, an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old.
Yeah. So that's a juggle just to get them organised anyway, isn't it? Like
and they do love a bit of fighting, my boys. Like they are all boys, very active, and they do have an unofficial fight club going on. So put them next to each other and it is survival of the fittest. Like it's brutal sometimes. So, I'd wake up in the morning and it'd just be straight into this like chaotic fighting environment. And it burnt me out. And I quickly realised that if I was going to survive it and if we were all going to have like, a semi-nice family, that we had to, number one, I had to take better care of myself. I couldn't just look after the boys. I had to look after myself first and put myself first, which is something I hadn't done for, since they were born, because we were always just going from one doctor to the next and one, dealing with one fire to the next fire. And so start being a bit more proactive about my day, start, looking after me, making sure I got time out. Oh my gosh, I'm such a nicer mother when I have some time out. Like I love my kids, but I need a break too. My husband's always been good at that. He loves motocross, so he goes on these motocross adventures. I just didn't have anything that like obviously got gorgeous friends and things like that, but I didn't have anything that was for me. It was all about the boys. So, having my own dreams and passion and, my own things that, that lit me up, not just the children and the day-to-day drudgery of it. And I think that when I started to put myself first or see myself and my time as a priority, how I was able to cope was a lot better.
If you don't mind me asking, not to pry, but I think for a lot of listeners at the moment who are obviously listening to this, they've probably got a really deep connection to what you're talking about. What does a joyless family look like?
I can see it now. I watch mums that I work with, and because our kids are often sensory seekers, right? So the kids are often crawling on them and touching them all the time and trying to get their attention, whether it's through negative or positive behaviour. I watch what the mum does with her eyes, and it's the same thing that I used to do. They often turn away when the kid is trying to engage them, and I recognise it because I did it as well. They often roll their eyes when the child's doing a behaviour that's not pleasant, and they turn away and they turn their whole body away usually. And that to me is exactly what I was. That's an exhausted mum because she's saying, I'm at my limit here. What you're doing is too much for me. I need my space. And, they're just subtle things, but I can see it. I can see that. But also, just her body language, when she's interacting with the kids, we're flat because we're waiting for the next thing that they're going to do wrong or hurt somebody or the next bit of feedback that we're going to get or the look that we're going to get from this person who walks past in the shopping centre that looks like control your child, like.
I know whenever I'm in schools, if I call a parent and wanted to have a chat to them about their child, and sometimes it's like, I want to share with you this really cool thing that happened today. Oh my goodness. I always have to lead with the conversation where, they'll see the school's number pop up. And I always go, hi, it's Angela from insert school. Don't worry, everything is great.
That's good. And that's really important to know too, that you can ring a parent for something good too. Like that's what we all forget to do. Like we forget to tell, parents how amazing their child is and the things that they're doing right. We often just, it's easier to remember the things that they've done wrong, but often the kids are making lots of progress. And that's like someone like you is great for doing that too, because it just makes the parent feel like they've got, like it's not all bad. Like there is beautiful things too.
So what have you learnt from your beautiful boys? All 4 of them, not just the 3 little ones, the 4 boys. What have you learned about life and the way that, people who either are neurologically different, energetically different, what I feel that we're all different. We've all got our own needs. We've got our own sensory needs. I have energy needs. We've all got our own needs. It's just how, as your name suggests, how dysfunctional that becomes or how limiting in life. But there's so many things we learn from our special people in our lives. From your 4 boys, what have you learned?
Oh, just the way that they look at problem solving fascinates me. Like sometimes they come out with things that is so outside of the box, that things that I could never have thought of, that make so much sense. And this is why, a lot of people with ADHD are gifted, and a lot of people that are on the spectrum have got this incredible ability to see things that we can't see. Now, I'm motivated by anything that saves time and organisation and routine and everything like that, which is fabulous. But sometimes I have a tendency to just get stuck in one pattern of thinking. And then, Xavier will just say something to me and I'm like, oh my goodness, like that is brilliant. Like if we listen to what they have to say, that it's revolutionary, the ideas. They're able to see things from a completely different angle, which I find fascinating. Also, I love, from my boys in particular, how they can instinctually do things. Like, say, for example, Anthony, he has never read, I don't think he's read a full book in his life, right? But he could go out the backyard and rebuild a truck, do it just on instinct, If it's something that he wants to do, he's incredibly brilliant at it. And he's just able to focus on it and do the things that he wants to do, which I think is amazing. If someone asked me to do any of those things that he does, I'd be like, oh, no, I can't. I'm not qualified. But, if they're motivated to do something, their ability to make those, to do those big things is really quite inspirational.
So what has been being married to a man with ADHD and having a grown-up in the house? I would imagine it's come with its own challenges, but it's probably also come with some really beautiful, enriching conversations too. What's it been like being married to a man with ADHD?
He's wild. Yeah, I still just look at him every day and just go, what? Like, he's harder for me than my children because I don't want to parent him, right? I'm not going to. He's my partner. I'm not teaching him strategies. So the kids, I can really focus on giving them the skills, and that's what I'm all about. But for my partner, I just sort of stand back and just kind of watch the tornado that is Anthony as he swirls in and then swirls out again. And being married to him has its challenges for sure, but it also has a lot of laughs. And he brings to our relationship the silliness, like the silliness with the kids, the play, the spontaneousness. Like he brings all that high energy stuff, which doesn't sort of come naturally to me. And so the kids love that. I'll give you a little story. Like once I was I just had a baby, I was very tired. I said to him, can you go and get the dinner off the stove and just start serving it up for us? And he's like, yep. And so somewhere in that, he has put the hot pot on the bench top and burnt in our white bench top, our white stove, a big circle. And so he knew it was bad, right? He knew this was going to be bad. And so instead of going, hey, I've burnt, he got a permanent marker out and made that circle a big smiley face and committed to the damage. He just went, and so when I came in, he's like, this happened, but now it's like, it's smiling, like it's happy about it. And I was like, oh my God.
And how can you not be happy with that?
I know. Like, how do you're angry and laughing at the same time, which is a perfect summary for our relationship, actually. But lots of moments like that where you're just like, what? But it's actually hilarious. And it keeps you on your toes.
Such depressing rates of divorce, particularly with couples that have children with a disability. But, you have a husband and 3 children. What have you done to keep the relationship together and not become one of the divorce statistics that we hear so often?
I think we don't always do it well. I'm not going to stand up here and pretend that we're amazing, but I think the one thing that has been a key thing is to learn a lot about ADHD. I've actually done a blog on this about our relationship. So to learn, to recognize things as not, so you can see him doing a behavior or something like that and you're like, okay, that's that. Like, you can actually identify what's causing that behavior, and to also separate myself from his reactions. So Anthony is quite funny. Like he'll have a big reaction over something that you just won't expect. And then sometimes it'll be a big deal. Like you can say, I crashed the car. And he's like, oh, okay. like no reaction. And then like he can't find the kitchen sponge, full on meltdown. And so you like, there's no proportion, like he struggles with like emotional regulation and, you know, so if I separate myself from that reaction and think, well, you know, because often he has a reaction and then it's done for him and he is fine, you know. So to not get caught up in his reaction of things, he comes good anyway, and he is, you know, he's able to regulate after those moments. But for me not to get stressed out or caught up in those reactions, because I know we both end up in the same place, and to always to remember to laugh at each other. We're very good at, we laugh at each other, with each other, at the kids. Like our kids come and say the most ridiculous things to us, which we find very hilarious. And so the other day, Ashton just walked in and goes, I hate rainbows. There's no gold at the end. It's fake. And he was just outraged. And we just sat there laughing about it for about half an hour, because that is absolutely true. It's a scam. And, you know, just bringing it together with laughter and a lot of patience as well. I mean, I'm an inherently impatient person, but when I'm motivated because I love my family and, you know, it pays to have a little bit of patience.
I think listening and taking that time to listen to kids, it just brings me so much joy. I know I had a little period of time where I, you know, had a little break from working with kids, and I thought, no, I'm going to go and be very mature in the world and wear very, you know, nice clothes and, you know, try. Oh my gosh, I can't even make sense of it because it's hilarious. I just missed so deeply the joy of kids. I missed so deeply the look in their eyes when they know that they've got something, they've achieved something. And, you know, whether it be kids with ADHD, anxiety, kids on the autism spectrum, whatever it is, even just kids who are struggling to handwrite or, you know, make social connections, whatever it is. There is nothing that brings me more joy than seeing that little glint in a child's eye when they know that they just did something they didn't think they could do. Or even that sort of sense when they look at you for, what should I do now? You know, without the words. And that's the stuff I always get really emotional when I talk about this stuff, because we have so much to learn from kids in general, but kids who really each day can be a bit of a struggle for them, they're the kids we really need to look to and go, tell me about life. Let's work this out together. Because it's a complicated, messy life for all of us. And these little guys and girls need our support. And that's, you know, my driver. So long gone are the heels and the and the suits. You know, these little guys are so joyful. But I'm really interested in hearing about your experience with the kids at school. Obviously, I run my programs, the Inclusive Classroom, and I support teachers and always have in building inclusive practices in classrooms. So I've seen the gamut of what's hasn't been done well, and also some really shining lights and go, yes, that you nailed that just then. What's your experience been like with the kids?
Look, mostly positive. It seems to be in my community that there's two different presentations that happen at school. They either the children hold it in all day and they're like very compliant at school, and then they get home and they explode and they're really intense for their parents, but they're quite good at school, or they are just pretty wild at school and, you know, have a bit of trouble at school regulating and sitting still and all that sort of stuff. I've got sort of a bit of one of each of those with my older boys. And the school, like the biggest tips that I could say for parents that are facing that is to really keep those lines of communication open with the school. I see a lot of parents not wanting to tell the school that their child has ADHD. I mean, they're going to find out anyway. Like, why are we not talking about it? You know, it's not negative, and it's only negative when we let it be negative. You know, like it's our responsibility as adults to really advocate for these kids and to make sure that they're getting the support, make sure they're getting movement breaks. You know, I've got lots of strategies which I can share with you via our Tools for Teachers blog that we've done, which actually surveyed our community and came up with strategies that teachers have been using with their kids that had been successful. I know a lot of the time ADHD kids don't like to be singled out, and they don't like to have, or, you know, kids on the spectrum don't like to be, you know, it doesn't like to be obvious. So we've got some really cool strategies about like turning a ruler over so it's red on one side and things like that when they need help. So it's not they always have to put their hand up, and lots of really cool little things. My son loves an important job. He likes to be important. So get these guys to hand out the notes and, you know, or if the behavior is getting a little bit too much and you need them to have a little outside break, get them to run a fake note to the office I think my son's teacher does that all the time. He's just very important running notes to the office just to give him a little movement break. I'm sure the notes just say keep this child busy for a couple of minutes. And so he goes to the office and has a chat with the office ladies, and they love him. Sometimes they give him a biscuit or something, and then he runs back. But those little movement breaks can be great without having to single out, like, it's, not drawing attention to the diagnosis as much as making it something a bit special. Things like putting them up first and not making them wait forever for their turn. By the time it gets to the end of the line, like, the child that has, a diagnosis can already have forgotten what's going on and forgotten the instructions, and then has to face, is nervous about whether they can remember these things. And so there's so many great tools that we've got in there in that Tools for Teacher blog, which you're welcome to share.
Oh, that's great. We'll make a link underneath the podcast. Thank you so much for your generosity there, because I know, yes, we will circulate that. I would love to know, how important was getting a diagnosis for you as a parent for your kids? Was it a turning point, or was it just a step along the process?
I very much support getting a formal diagnosis, because I think you've got to know, when you're looking at ways of making it easier for yourself, for the school, for the family, it really helps to know what you're working with. And so, as you would know, ADHD is almost never just ADHD. It's coupled with, can be coupled with autism, Tourette's, being gifted. It's not often do kids just have one thing going on. Like, kids are unique and they have different things happening underneath the surface. So it's really good to know what you're working with. Also, it qualifies them for movement breaks and things like that, which I think you've got much more chance of being able to go into the school and talk to them and collaboratively problem solving some of the troubles that you might be having, if you can say, this is something that, my child has. I mean, in the big scheme of things, it's not going to change very much in terms of how you treat your child, but it is good to know what you're working with. Things like, having a sleep study done, getting IQ testing done, all those sorts of things, to know at least, what things does your child, what areas is your child struggling with, and what areas can we help them, and a diagnosis really gives going through that diagnostic process can really help with that, with giving you all that information, which I think is important.
So for parents who are feeling really overwhelmed, I know I get a lot of parents go, the school has sort of said to me, something's going on with my child, or something's wrong. It's, the language sometimes is horrifying, but it is, what it is. People are sort of flagging issues with parents, and parents often say, oh my goodness, like, I don't even know where to start. What's your suggestion to parents who might have had that conversation with a teacher? Or, even I'm sure you've had this too, even prior to school, daycares and preschools and things are flagging with parents that there could be something happening for a child. What's your suggestion to the parent if that conversation's brought up with them?
The great thing is to educate yourself on what that you think could be going on. This is really where the functional family shines. This is everything that I wish I'd been told 12 years ago when Xavier had first been born, just to have all that information. So you're presented with what is available to you. You don't have to go on this big discovery mission of, trying to work out what's going to work, just letting you know all the options that are available. So we know, one of the great things is early intervention, with an OT, with speechy, with, a child psychologist, those sorts of things are great places to get started for assistance and really to guide your family as well. But the main thing is to number one, look at it. It's not all negative, like to not see it as necessarily a negative. Every child, if there's anything I've learnt through having the functional families, every child's got something going on, like everyone's dealing with something. This is just their thing. And so it's up to us now to work out the ways to make this work for them and make this work for us as a family. And the more you know about it and the more support you have, obviously the easier that's going to be.
Early intervention is just so crucial, isn't it? And I think, do you find a lot of parents don't take action because they're trying to come to terms with what they've been told? Even if they haven't got a formal diagnosis, people are sort of suggesting, do you find that parents sort of sit for a little while just to let it settle and to come to sort of terms about going, what does this mean for me?
Yeah, I mean, it can go a couple of ways. When I got the diagnosis for Xavier, I was relieved. I was like, oh, God, I knew this was coming, Now that I know for sure, like now I've got a piece of paper to back it up. Now I'm going to go in and start moving things around, But, for other parents, it can be quite a sad process, and that they they realize that their child's going to be struggling with some things, and that can be quite confronting. And it's okay for them to have a moment of sadness about it, but the most important thing is that they get back up and they start advocating for their child, and they start looking and experimenting and seeing what's going to work for them and their family. And, you know, there's some incredible things, like some of the parents in our community, they just do, I've got to give it to them, hey, like they get up day after day and they do the best for their family. And sometimes it's very, very hard, like, you know, and they might want to run away, and you know, sometimes it's very confronting and very sad, and the world seems like there's a lot of doors shutting in your face, and they're there backing it up day after day, and my hat goes off to them, because what they're dealing with, most people's home is a safe haven, right? And if your home is chaos, it can feel very confronting, you know? So that's one of the bits that gives me the most amount of joy, is to help restore these households and to help them feel joy and to help them feel like their home is joyful and safe, and, you know, that they can take positive steps, that it's not hopeless. No one's family is hopeless, that we can do things to help them.
So I love that you use the word joy. So for people who are listening, parents at the moment who are listening, they're going, oh my gosh, a joyful household, that just feels like so far away. We talked about what a joyless family looked like earlier. What does a joyful family look like when you've got 4 people in your home with ADHD?
Well, it's never going to be a quiet house, right? Like, it's not going to be a quiet house, but, you know, sometimes quiet's boring. So what I decide joy is in my household is for us all to have a little bit of extra time. I've very quickly identified that we need systems and procedures and things in place, because it's very hard to feel joy when you're rushing from one thing to the other, and you've got kids that don't transition well, and, you know, you're always like chasing your tail, and every day's Groundhog Day. So getting back time is very, very important. Having systems and things, very clear visual, procedures and things for ADHD kids or kids on the spectrum, and routines so they can start doing things independently, and then coming together as a family for things like family meetings and asking your children to be involved in family decisions and letting them feel that connection that we're all in this together. We might not be perfect, but we are, you know, we're a team. We're all doing something together, and having that sense of having the time and the energy for having play and silliness and, you know, being able to experience those things together, so we haven't just got exhausted parents just going, no, please get away from me. But we've got parents that are like, come on, let's give that a go. Like, yes, let's build a swing off that cliff in the backyard. Like, let's try it. Okay, because we've got enough energy and we've got enough time to do that. Let's see how that goes for everyone. Like, but when you've got the time and you've got things in order and you've got those systems in place, you do find that you have more energy to do the more fun things, which is important.
Sharon, I have to admit, while you were speaking then, I was going, me tick. I like systems. I like routine. We might have to have another conversation offline, I think.
I'm so for it, because if you can do things that I've quickly identified, that if we want these families to have a nicer life, and that's ultimately what my goal is, we have to make things easier for them. Like, things have to be easier. And part of that is, you know, having very clear things in place, whether the primary caregiver isn't getting lumped with everything, you know, that we can have routines and things so that he or she gets a bit of help as well, because often we end up doing things because it's just too hard to ask.
How important is that community around you to lend a hand? So if in the family it can be feeling a bit chaotic, how important is that next step out of the family? So your friends and support networks for families who are feeling that chaos right now.
Oh, look, I think it's something that is changing, right? Like, as the perception of, you know, our special needs kids, people are becoming more aware that getting support from outside of that immediate family unit is sort of, it's more acceptable now. One thing I do want to encourage every parent to do is, if someone offers to help you, say yes. Like, don't say, oh, no, I can do it myself. Like, if someone's offering, like, to say yes. And if no one's offering, tell them how they can help you. Like, be really clear about it, because what we're dealing with is a lot. And it does take a village to raise a kid. And sometimes our villages, somewhere in all of this, our villages have kind of just fallen by the wayside and everyone's got to do everything themselves. And so, if we're all clear about ways we can help, because often people want to help, they just don't know how to, they don't want to offend you by asking, they don't want to.
Hey, it looks like your family is chaotic. Hey, it looks like you have no control of your family. How can I help?
Don't put it like that.
That's been something I think for a lot of women and mums, is that asking for help and having, wanting to look like we have everything in control, but having conversations like what we're having now really dispels those myths that, hey, we actually don't all have it under control. We are all trying this and we're all supporting. And I can see what the true value of the functional family is for families. I also just wanted to ask you, we have a lot of teachers that listen to a kid's life, and obviously because of the work that I do in schools with the inclusive classroom. As a parent, what would you love to be able to have the conversation or be able to just advise teachers on, ways that they can better work with kids with ADHD, or even from a belief system? I'm not sure. I guess my question is, what do you want to say to teachers about how they can support kids with ADHD?
I guess my biggest point would be to show the child that you like them. So often this comes up again and again, that the child actually gets the perception just through all the well-meaning corrections and things that the teacher doesn't like them. And it's very hard for their self-esteem. And so the teacher is trying their best. Teachers have a tough job. Like, I'm homeschooling right now because of the lockdown. And I tell you what, I just take my hats off to teachers. And there's statistically 2 kids in every classroom that has ADHD, and every kid's struggling with something. And you've got to think about all of this stuff and, try and cater for everyone. It is tough.
What I just found, Sharon, recently is they've actually said that teachers aren't essential workers.
Oh,
I saw it on a list and it baffled me. How can a teacher not be an essential worker? Anyway, that's a whole nother conversation as well, but I'm totally with you that teachers have a huge job all the time, every day.
And a huge power as well. So if it only takes one teacher to believe in a child, for that child to remember them for the rest of their lives. So I'll give you an example. When Anthony was at school, he was way too hyperactive to be in the classroom. So he was banned from the classroom. He used to get in trouble when he wasn't even in the classroom, but they used to get him to do odd jobs around the school. Now, this is back in the day when ADHD wasn't understood as much as it is now. So they used to get him to do odd jobs. So you walk around the school and he goes, cemented in that letterbox, planted those trees, put up that bench there. They used to and as he was walking around doing these odd jobs for the school, can you imagine this this is primary school, by the way. You can imagine this little kid walking around doing all these odd jobs and playing with cement and things. The principal saw something in Anthony and used to follow him around doing these odd jobs as he was doing things with his hands, and just talk to him about what they were learning in the classroom, but as Anthony was doing things. And he still talks about that to this day, that one principal that believed in him and could see what he needed. He knew that he didn't, because he couldn't sit still in the classroom, but knew that he couldn't sit still. So give him a task to do that he was interested in, which was building and doing all that stuff, and talk to him for some of the day about what they were doing. Now, I'm sure that principal had such an impact because he was able to recognise that Anthony had something of value and, had contributions to make, but wasn't built for sitting there and being quiet.
That is so powerful. Just show them that you actually like them.
Yes. Show them that you actually like them. And that's happened again and again as my boys have gone through school. They polarize people, right? So they either love them, they've got these teachers that absolutely love their energy and they love their enthusiasm and they absolutely, it thrives, or they just cannot stand it and it's too much and they're disruptive. And so all you have to do is show the child that you believe in them, that they are capable, that you value what they have to say. And I think you'll get, it starts it off at a beautiful journey, and it's something that's easy to do too.
I think that is the most beautiful place to finish our conversation. But the functional family, where can people find out more around? And obviously it's focused on supporting parents of children who have ADHD or anxiety. Where can they find out more about you? And just what's a couple of things that you will cover in the program?
Yes, sure. So the website is www.thefunctionalfamily.com.
Easy, and thank you.
Yes, and we're on all the socials. But our program basically steps you through. So we start off by giving you some information about ADHD and behavioural challenges and things. We've got amazing experts on board to, share their knowledge as well. But then we systematically go through all those friction points at home. All the bits that I said in our house that suck. We have got systems and strategies and everything for those points. So we just look at each different friction point around the home and then make that area easier with systems and all our strategies for those areas. So what happens at the end is it sort of builds over 6 weeks, is that little by little, all these little changes happen. And at the end of 6 weeks, there's just this big family transformation because we've just been addressing a little bit each day and changing things up and kind of like renovating little bits of friction in the home to make it more joyful and give you back more time.
Oh my goodness. We will link to all of that. I feel it really is life-changing. I know from the testimonials that I've seen of families who have been a part of your past programs, it really has changed people's lives. And, my driving factor for everything that I do is around believing that every child deserves the best start in life, no matter what challenges they face. And you are doing a huge part to make that a reality for me, because I believe that, kids need us, don't they? They need us to be the shining light. They need us to be supportive, but we also need to slow down long enough and learn from them as well. So thank you for the work you're doing. And Sharon, we will link to everything. Please keep sharing the work that you do through all your socials. I watch it and I hope every parent and teacher that's listening to Kids Life also does the same. So thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been so wonderful to have a chat with you today and it's been incredible.
Thanks, Sharon. Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for joining A Kid's Life. I'm Angela Lockwood. And as I said, we've been joined by Sharon Collon, who is the founder and owner of The Functional Family. We will link to everything that Sharon does underneath. And obviously, you are never, ever alone. No matter what journey your family is going through, there is always support. There is always people who are in your corner, and always reach out. They're there waiting for you to help. And everything that, if you want to learn anything more, A Kid's Life, we try to focus on kids' issues so that us adults can understand them a little bit better. Thanks for joining me. Until next time, enjoy. Thank you for listening to A Kid's Life podcast. To stay up to date with all new episodes, please subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. If you want to know more about the Inclusive Classroom or any of the other programs I provide, please go to angelalockwood.com.au. And until next time, slow down, have fun, and enjoy.